Sunflower Day. Let's get ready for summer. I'm going to share with you the top 5 tips that I learned from painting all these sunflowers. So let's get to it. I first apply water because this is a wet on wet technique. Then I apply the color so it bleeds into each other. All the colors that I apply, I don't mix them on the palette. I let them bleed together on the paper. And my brush is not as wet as the paper. So basically, my brush is not soaked with water. It's just about like a milky consistency. You can see I'm using a brown here and letting it all just bleed together. Now I changed brushes. I used one with a smaller one with a finer point. It's actually a size 8 round, but it has this great point to it that I love, especially when I'm painting petals. So it's really, really nice. Now what I'm doing is I'm just touching the center of the sunflower, the disc there, the center of the sunflower. So the yellow kind of seeps into it and the center seeps into the yellow. Now this is some burnt sienna, which is going to give it kind of the golden look. And I also do use some quinacridone gold as well. And this is such a fun part. This is burnt sienna and drops of just water on the petals and then some, actually I think that was Van Dyke Brown right in the middle. And then just watch it move and watch it bleed. I just love it. Now you notice I did use a little tissue there on the stem when I'm doing the green stem. So blotting up your watercolors, blotting up the paint with your brush or a tissue is just as important as laying down the paint. Right here, I'm blotting it back up and you get just a nice highlight. Now this flower, if you notice, I'm painting the petals first. Then I added the center. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe. It really helps me make more for you. Thank you. So you can see the difference from the sunflower in the middle, from the one on the right where I did the petals first and the center, the disc, second. This is something you definitely need to practice on and experiment because it does make a difference which way you do it. And it's just something fun to try out. Now you see here, I am painting leaves. There are different ways to paint leaves. I'm doing super wet on wet here. And you'll notice my brush was straight up and down. So I was able to get kind of the finer lines and the outlines of the leaves. Then I went in with a really wet brush and a tissue and to make it kind of a nice loose watercolor style. So now this is wet on dry, and this is some Van Dyke Brown with some burnt umber, and my brush is not that wet. You can see the consistency of the paint in the upper right there. That's a brown that I used, and it's kind of like a little bit, it's like a milky, not quite milky, I would say a cream consistency. And I'm careful not to move the paint, the layer underneath. So now that that's drying, I'm going back to the flowers and you'll see I'm using a different brush this time. It's a filbert brush and you get softer petal edges, so rounder. That are kind of softer. So I wanted like a younger flower, younger petals. So I thought they would be a little softer. And plus, they're not going to be facing the viewer. This is going to be the back side of the flower. So got a lot of base yellow on there, got a lot of pigment paint on there because I knew I was going to do this technique, this fun toothpick technique. And you kind of need a lot of paint on there so you can move it around, and also a darker color paint so the white of the paper can come through when you scrape it. It's a fantastic, fun technique. I definitely suggest you play around with it and try it because you can get some really great effects that you can't get with a brush. Okay, so I'm going kind of heavy now with the brown and that's burnt sienna. And I went a little heavy with it because I knew I was going to do the toothpick. So you can see how I'm moving it around, moving the paint around. And I actually will stick my Q-tip in the paint on my palette and get a little bit on my toothpick there. And then so I can create kind of a mark like that a brush just can't do. It's really hard to get kind of a line like that from a brush. So I recommend experimenting, playing around. It's so much fun and you get some really cool effects from it. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos. It really does help this channel. Thank you so much. So now what I'm doing is taking a wet brush. I changed brushes again. This is a super pointy brush. And, I like it to lift. This is the best brush that I found to lift paint. So I did this pail during our live session, and I didn't really like where it was going. I was live, I was talking and watching the chat and all that. So I really wanted to kind of correct a few things that I did. So I ended up just adding water, lifting a lot of the paint. And now that it's pretty wet, I'm going in and adding my darker values. I lifted up and added some lighter values. You can see I added a little red over there, some pink, just to get kind of a different highlight. And that's not, yellow. Now I'm doing some reflections of the sunflower. So I put yellow in the pail, put a little green in there for the reflections of the flowers. I recommend this brush. I don't really like to push supplies too much, but that Da Vinci Spin size 2 is a really good brush. It's a workhorse for me. So I'll put a link to that below. So now I'm using a different brush. And I'm getting the kind of the chrome. I'm trying to get, not the chrome, the brass effect of the pail, trying to get the shininess and, the reflections and all that. Now I'm back to another brush, wet on wet for the shadow. This is Payne's Gray. I usually use Payne's Gray a lot for my shadow. While that dries, I'm doing some touch-ups on the pail and back to the shadow. While it dried a little bit more, I can get some more pigment on there to get a little darker. Then I thought it would be fun to have a little water dribbling out of the pail. So I did a little river of water with some really bright blue. Something fun to do. After that all dried, I did some really dark black colors for the shadow. And here we go, the final sunflower. You can see the real-time video right here. Watch that next. Thank you.